I saw a movie called The Cross and the Switchblade with David Wilkerson, and how he worked with the gangs in New York, and my heart was stolen.
That movie planted the seed for erenavandeventer to start working with young men in gangs in the late 1980s in Worcester, South Africa. What was the challenges and the obstacles that she had to overcome? What was really good advice given to her for working cross-culturally with the gangs? Erena now works with the Changemaker program, helping young men get out of gangs and drugs. Join me and Caleb in this exhilarating conversation. And like Caleb says, a story right out of the movies. So Erena, I met you in 2010 in Worcester at Kibbutz Al Shama, and I've been so challenged and so inspired by you and in the time that I worked with you, but even in that time hearing all the stories that happened 10, 20 years before I came, and even the last 5 years or so that I've not been there just to follow the stories of other people. It's been so amazing. And yeah, so how did it happen that the Afrikaner woman in apartheid years, in the height of apartheid, decided to go and work in dangerous gang territories with gangs? How did that happen?
It started when I was actually back at school in an Afrikaner white school, only for girls. And I came to know the Lord when I was in matric. That was in 1972. Grade 12, and I saw a movie called The Cross and the Switchblade with David Wilkerson, and how he worked with the gangs in New York, and my heart was stolen. And at that stage, I didn't know what to do with my life, and I thought, okay, I'll become a teacher, but I hate standing in front of people and talking, so I was so scared. But then someone told me about social work. And I realized, wow, I can actually do David Wilkerson's work. I can do it. So and that's how I studied to become a social worker. And so it's been in my heart since I was a schoolgirl already. And after becoming a social worker, at one stage I got a post here in Worcester as a probation officer. Yes, I had to make a recommendation to the court what to do with him. And I saw when I did this background report, I found out that all these young men were part of a gang, and my heart started stirring and stirring, and that's when I knew, but it's gonna happen. I am gonna become a gang worker. And it's a long story, but by 1983, Child Welfare felt that they needed someone to work with the gangs. And because at that stage, one of the foster girls, she was gang raped. And they just felt, no, that's enough. Enough is enough. And so I applied for that post. And I got it. But if I can just continue, when you ask about, when I went for my interview, when the post was advertised, when I went for the interview, they didn't want me to have it because they said, you're a white Afrikaner lady, you can't do it. And but I just knew in my heart, it's my job. It's my job that. And in the end, they said I can give it a go, and that's where it started.
Yeah, and how did it start? You had some very practical things that you did.
Okay, just also again, for Marius, my husband, it was actually a no-no. He said, I'm a dreamer. I read too many books, and it won't work. But he saw, this dream is not going to die away, and I nagged. And eventually he gave his consent. But he said you can only work in the mornings. He didn't want me at night to be out in the community because it's difficult communities, because there's gang fights and it's violent, cruel. A lot of things were happening. So he said I can work in the mornings. And then God just sent beautiful people around me. Charles de Villiers, who said that he wants to help, he wants to work with me, and he said he will do the evening work. You and Karim, you've met him, Louise. Um, he was absolutely a hero in the community. He's a political activist, and he said he's going to help me as well. He's going to take me around, and so the platform was there. But there came a time that I also wanted to know what's happening out there in the community. The practical things we did. We just started with one gang because Ewan's house was a gathering place for one gang, the BFK, and then so we started showing movies there, and then the other gang in Rudderval, where their headquarters were, they were wanting to know why is the BFK now working with welfare, and so we started doing it there as well, and Ewan helped find a place where we actually were able to go into the headquarters of the Scorpion gang in Rudderval too. And that was the beginning stages,
Wow. I have a question. Did you, when you first were getting this posting, did you have support from the ones that said you should not do this because you're a white lady? Once they saw what was happening, did they seem to come on board and wanting to support you, or was it still kind of like you were kind of just left out there to fend for yourself?
The director at that stage of child welfare, Mrs. Ruth Druma, she became our greatest fan. And anything
Wow.
I asked, if I said, I need this, I need that, she would fight for me. So, she's not with us anymore, but she was my greatest fan. Yes.
Can you paint a little bit the picture of what it was like in those communities? I mean, it was what was the years and sort of what was sort of happening, and why was gangs such a big thing at that time?
A lot of poverty, and it's the same reason why we still have gangs today. Nothing has changed really. But just one thing about Roodeval that stood out for me, our gang Turks was the BFK had the best Turk. They were in town. They had, the cinema, the swimming pool, creative things, sport ground, hospital, the clinics, everything was in their area. Whereas in the Roodeval, those gangs, the Scorpion gang, they weren't allowed to enter these places because they would be killed. And so the gang in the Roodeval was gruesome. If one of their gangsters, if they stuck a knife in you, they would do it in your back, which in those days it was a no-no. But they didn't care because they were so cruel. So, and those gangs in those days, they didn't have guns. The weapons they used were stones, garden forks, chains. It was very cruel. These days, the guys get shot and they don't feel any pain. But that was the things that the gangsters did. It was horrific.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into detail, but it was terrible what they did.
Yeah. And then through what you've been doing, I remember you started with soccer games, and there was a progression, and it came to a point that they actually made peace with one another in Worcester, hey?
That's right. It was actually a 4-year program. It started in September 1983. We had the different headquarters that we were allowed to in the BFK and in the Scorpion area in Roodeval, but they were weary. They didn't want to get together. So we planned a soccer game out of town in Hoston, which is near Hermanus. So they came together, but it was also very difficult because December is when the factories, that's right, the factories close. Yeah, they close building factories, the buildings, that's building construction. They also close down, so there's no work, and the energy rises and the fights increase. And so in the end, they said, "Sorry, we're not going to go on this trip to Austin. It's too dangerous." So the team, we prayed. I don't know if you know Charlotte Cass. She was also part of the team. We prayed together and we asked the Lord what to do. And Father said, "Why would I leave them in their hour of need? Please go forward." And so we just pushed through. Sorry. And so we pushed through, and it was an amazing event. And that was the icebreaker for us, really. And then they started trusting us. And then from there, we did more regular gatherings. We went to a farm that we got a bus. It's beautiful stories, actually, that happened along the way. And we take them out every week or so, and they would play games. But it wasn't easy because they would smoke dacha and they would go into the vineyards and cause damage. But we just always felt pushed through many times. One wondered, is this really going to work? And all these little things it came together. In the end, we got a place in town where we could meet together. It was actually the BFK that allowed us to use a certain area. So we would escort the Scorpions in to have boxing classes and play the guitar. That's good, that. And then one day, when the car stopped with them, the bus or transport stopped, they thought this is my ticket, our ticket now into the enemy territory. Start to fight right here.
Right.
So it was chaos. But it wasn't an easy road. You see, it wasn't an easy road. But we continued. And after 4 years, Mama Scorpion, she's also passed away already. She came to the office with a few of the Scorpions, and they told me that there are no more gang fights. And then the letters started coming in from prison where they say, we've been warned. The gangsters actually sent letters to their friends in prison and reformatories to say, listen, we have peace in our time. We want to keep it this way.
Wow.
So when they came back, they actually came, the prisoners, ex-prisoners, when they came out, they came to see me in the office. They said they couldn't believe it, but there was actually peace. And the gangsters actually then gradually escorted each other into their houses and had rides together. So it was amazing.
Yeah.
And God was really faithful.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just can't not say but the obvious, like, all because of, her obedience when she was in metric. This is what's come from it. And I mean, Irene, this is honestly better than, we always hear like the Hollywood movies and what makes a movie. But the best thing about this story is, you see the good and the bad and the ugly. And like you said, there are times like you were having such breakthroughs, and then there would be like slip ups, but you guys still kept enduring. And I think, honestly, for everyone that's listening, like that literally is the message for me of like endurance. Like, I see above all else, like there's just been endurance, and so much has come from your yes. I can't imagine it's been an easy route, and I know it's probably put a lot of strain on relationships and friendships and being seen as an outcaster at times, but God, wow.
Before we started talking just now, Caleb, when you prayed for us and when you just thanked God for His faithfulness, I had tears in my eyes because that's the story.
Yeah.
God is faithful because this is His heart. In the end, it's really His heart and His incredible love for this people. And to be his hands and his feet. What a privilege! Huh?
Yeah.
What a privilege! It's actually just his heart that one feels beating inside.
There are so many treasures stored up in your cultural identity. Learn how to discover them through the My Time to Shine free resource. Find the link in the show notes. Erena, I just for a moment want to spend a little bit of time also on the fact that you were an Afrikaner working in a colored community, and it is really cross-cultural. We share the same language, but actually our cultures are so different from the men. And I'm sure as an Afrikaner, there must have been moments that you were challenged in many ways in your Afrikanerskap, if you can say it in Afrikaans. And things that God had to change in your heart, even, and things that you've learned from them as well. So I just, for a moment, just spend a bit of time on that and just hear what's the things that you've really discovered in that time. That you've learned, and it's been keys for you actually to continue in your work for so many years later on now.
You know, I only have one key or one thing to tell you when it comes to this. You and Karim, as I said, he was the political activist. He was the guy who helped me. He was the one to escort me and guide me through this whole process. And I just take my hat off to him because I have so many Afrikaner things, that we don't even know we have. But Ewan one day said to me, when I started working at child welfare, my mother was a very prim and proper lady. So I came in, if you know what's a Matson suit, it was, I was dressed proper and real proper. With stockings and, and Louise, you don't know me like that.
No.
But that's how my mom brought me up. And I came to the office and I remember Ewan just looked at me up and down. And those clothes that just never saw me again. So since then, I've been walking around in my jeans and my shorts and my t-shirt, and I feel so tired. But the thing that Ewan told me is, he said, never try to be like the gangsters or to act like the colored people to feel you must fit in. You just be yourself. You talk the way you talk. Don't try to imitate their gang language and their slang and that. You just be yourself because they're going to discover your heart and who you really are. So and that to me freed me up. It freed me up to just be myself, and that was fantastic.
That's really practical, and it's really great. I didn't think about asking this, but when I saw some of the notes you wrote or respond to some of my questions, so 2012, I was part of South Roots, and we went to Germany and we visited some places in Germany. And the main purpose of that was really to say thank you to missionaries from Germany coming to South Africa. But yeah, in effect, they went around the world. And you've got a story there, hey? Part of why we went to Germany is because of you. So do you want to tell that story? And I will link onto it a little bit further on. Yeah, but you can tell that story.
Yeah, I always had a tremendous love for the colored people. I remember when I grew up, and we had a nanny. Hannah was her name, and I loved her to bits. And I remember just embracing her, just coming around her and just putting my arms around her, just loving her. And she would tell me, Reinke, that's what she called me. Reinke, you mustn't let your mother see you doing this. I just didn't understand it. But it was just something in my heart. And perhaps I'm going to jump a little bit around now to just share a few things. I didn't know anything about apartheid. I grew up very secluded and sheltered. And it was only the first time we went to the voting polls. That was in the late 70s, I think. I'm not sure. The first time that I was allowed to vote. And I didn't know what this was about. And I worked at that stage, Department of Colored Affairs. That's where I worked. And I was in my element. I loved working there. And so I got all the colored ladies and guys there and said, hey, we're going to vote today, come. And everybody stared at me, just stared at me. And that's when the penny started dropping. But son, what's going on here? And that's when I discovered it. But anyway, I knew that I had a love for the colored people in my heart. You know my story, Louise, when we started the kibbutz and Jeanette worked with me. And just talking to Jeanette, and I felt that maybe there's a story in what's happening here. If I look at the gangs and then the street kids, Maria House, and then people tell Shema. And at that stage, when I wanted to know that where do I come from? Who am I? And I went into my history and I learned that my great grandfather, Peter Sterrenberg, he was a missionary that was sent from Germany to South Africa to the colored nation, the Cape colored people, to serve them with the gospel. You know, when I discovered that, I knew, it's in my blood, it's in my DNA. That's where it comes from. So yes, I'm very excited to have a great grandfather. And if I can just quickly say, you know, he came to South Africa in 1859. But just before he left, when they had farewell of the students, he met a lady named Louise Heschel. And when he came to South Africa, he was for a year or two. He sent a letter to the mission house and asked if Louise can marry him, which is also a long story. But actually, she then came also to South Africa. So both my great grandfather and great grandmother are directly missionaries from Germany, which excites me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was so thrilled that you guys went to Germany and you saw all these reports and things there at the office.
Yeah, it was really interesting in 2012 to see that, and also to connect then later on. About 3 years ago, we went back and then we visited Harenut, where the Moravian missionaries was sent out from. So yeah, that connections was just so amazing. And then actually for me, the amazing story is a couple of years ago, we also went up to Namibia and we visited the in Rooibos, the Buster people, and we came across a little book telling their story. And when I read it while we were traveling, I read through the book and I discovered, but yes, Peter Sterrenberg's name again. And it's about him moving with them and part of their journey of them moving out of Cape Town up to Namibia and planting basically at one point at one of the places he was involved and part of their journey as well. So that was pretty amazing to discover this person's name again and just see the connections back to where we are and what we've been doing at that time. So yeah, that was really great.
You know, I've had tears in my eyes this whole time because this has just been blowing my mind away, I think, by the faithfulness of God. And one of the things I'm asking the Lord, I'm like, okay, everything that you've been sharing, Irene, is right now, 2021, with everything that is going on in the world and all of this living here in North America with all of this racial division and tension, the distortion where people could think, man, white people don't love black people or whatnot. And, you know, a bit with my story, you know, I was adopted by a missionary family. But when I hear this story and just, you know, your history and everything that's happened, I'm just like, come on, brothers and sisters, open your eyes and ears. Like, this has been happening for so long. And your story is one of reconciliation. And it's funny because I've been in South Africa and I knew Jeanette would share a bit about you and like I would hear things, but I I didn't never really got it pictured until now. It's really getting pictured. And yeah, I'm just so thankful. Yeesh. Thanks, Luis. I'm crying on the podcast, but that's
Okay.
okay. But just so moved. So yeah, so moved by yeah, your obedience and your yes, because it has been a chain reaction. And I think it reminds me once again how thankful I am for being adopted by missionary families, basically people that they came to fight a war that's not their war. And that's what you've done. And so many of us who have gone before us, we've chosen to fight for something that's not really our fight, but because it's the kingdom with a different perspective. We're like, this is why we're doing it. And so yeah, I first time I went to Change Makers in Ruderval as well, and hearing a bit about that, I was just like, "Am I living in a movie?" Because I'm like hearing the
Yeah.
story. So yeah, I'm so
Yeah,
blessed.
so
Oh my
Caleb
word!
just mentioned the change makers. So yeah, there was a second chapter with the gang violence and things in Worcester, and that's sort of where I met you.
It just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, so I
Oh,
don't know exactly where the story started, Erena. You can tell the story what happened sort of, and I mean you were actually not so much involved for a season, and then God really called you back, and that was around 2009, 2010. I'm not sure exactly, 2011, 2012. I'm not sure exactly when it was. But yeah, how did that come about? And yeah, tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. Um, I was working at that stage. I felt to take a sabbatical at a certain stage. I can't remember exactly the year. It was about 27, 28, round about there. And then a friend asked me to come and work with her at House of Hope, which is a shelter for women. And I took the job, but I know now that was my schooling, because my heart was always for the men that I saw in House of Hope. What happens when women come off the street or out of abusive situations, and things that a program for 3 months or 6 months, taking them in, and I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we can do this for men? And at that stage, as you know, Louise as well, the gangs again, it was a new generation, new gangs. So of course, my heart was excited. Lord, there's something else. And then at that stage, 2011, I heard someone talking about tick. I don't know what's the proper name for tick now. I'm not
I
sure how
know
to
it's
pronounce it
different
now.
names around the world as well.
Something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah, or crystal. I don't know what they call it.
crystal meth, I think.
Um, and I read that's it. That's a crystal
Yeah.
meth. And so it was a new. It wasn't just the gangs now. It was also a drug. Um, and I felt God calling me. It's time to go back. And so we had a call, an outreach to all the gangs. We got YWAM to pray, and we went out to pray all in the different communities to set up the atmosphere. And then we arranged the evening for South Roots to come in at the Klein Theater in town, where the gangsters were brought in. And I know you guys was it Broken Shackles,
I
or
think
what
we
did you
did the
do?
bride.
What performance
The
was it?
bride.
Or the Bride.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and so there it started, and we asked the gangs afterwards if there's anyone who wants help, that they must come and see us. And so that's how it started. The gang, the gangsters and the addicts, they said that they wanted help. So that was November 2011. We had a camp for those gangsters who wanted to be set free, and also from the drugs. So that was in 2011. And then I started working again with the gangs, but then realized what I learned at House of Hope. We need a house to get the men to come and live together in the house, and they can be mentored. It wasn't easy, but Kibbutz Al Shema at that stage had a house available, and they said we could rent it. And so by 2013, we had this program running at Kibbutz Oshima in the house. And then, of course, these men, their lives changed. You know, Aubin. Aubin was addicted to drugs for 16 years. And he came through the program, and God changed his heart. He came to know Jesus Christ during that program. And he's now one of our leaders. And other guys came in, Brendan and Edmund. Oh, they all have beautiful stories. So their friends can see the change in them. And they say, well, if Aubin can change, if Jubilian can change, I can change too. There's hope for me. And so more and more men knocked on our door. And we were only taking about 6. We stretched it to 8. But we just couldn't take in more. And we knew we needed another house. We needed a bigger place. And so 2018, the doors opened for us to go to Maria House. I think you've been there, Caleb, where we moved over, where we can now take in 16 men at one time, which is fantastic. And our staff all come through gangs and drugs, so they're the best guys to mentor the young ones coming in now. And I love to see.
If I can just say, it's beautiful there. It's beautiful there. It's it is. It is.
What I enjoy is to see that the men now have taken ownership, and they're running with the program. So it is good.
Yeah, I think for me also, over the years, to have seen just how this is a community where the men are so absent in a sense, taken out of families because of the drugs, because of the gangs, and it's that fatherlessness that you guys are addressing and really raising up men to take their role. First of all, discovering the identity in Christ, but with that comes, like you say, taking on responsibility, and not just for themselves, but it's got to impact even back to their families. And I think one of the most beautiful things that you guys do is have the breakfast, reconciliation breakfasts. And I don't know, it's just so beautiful. And yeah, I don't know if you can share a little bit more about that. Yeah, some of the things that has happened in families and even in the community that have changed around.
Sure. Oh, I can share a lot about that. For instance, Aubin. When Aubin came in, his girlfriend, Melissa, we call her Lisi, she said, but she also wants to get off drugs. She lost a baby because of the drugs, but she came through, and they're married today, and their families are being changed. So we see family changing. So the men come in for 6 months, okay? And every 6 months we have a reconciliation breakfast where the parents are invited to come over and have a breakfast with the men. The men are prepared, they're counseled beforehand so that they are at a place where they can ask forgiveness from their hearts, not just words, but from their hearts, to truly be sorry, to have remorse for what they did. And there's always tears. It's so emotional to see these men asking their parents, please forgive me. And the parents cry too. And the stories that come out when they say, but I can see there's changes. Please will you forgive me as a parent as well. And where they can hug each other and make peace and reconcile again. Now that is one of our highlights, and we have that twice a year now. Now we can see families change as well. You asked me as well before, and Louise, that maybe I can share a story. If I can just share the latest story, it's about Zane. Zane is 29. He saw Brandon is on our staff. Brandon was a JCY gangster. He was addicted to drugs. He was one of the main guys. So Zane watched Brandon change. Now Zane is also one of the leaders in the JCY gang. He's been in prison for years. He's just in and out, and he's got a very bad history. He's done some terrible things in life. And he said that he wanted to come into the program. In 6 months' time, he gave his heart to the Lord. He said before he leaves the program, left on the 21st of March. That's when he finished. On the 20th of March, he married
Wow.
in Maria House. He married his girlfriend of 16 years
Wow.
and his 3 children, and they were at the wedding. And he went out on that Sunday. It was the Saturday and the Sunday he went out to be with his family. He trusted the Lord for a house. Somehow, somewhere, his friends or someone heard, and they knew he needed a house, so they put up a Wendy for him in the background, back space of where Annalene, his wife, stays. And at that stage, Annalene, his wife, now his wife, she wasn't his child, but Zane was taught at Maria House that every morning he start with devotions. So every morning he would get his wife, Annalene, and his 3 kids, and he would make them sit down, and they would have devotions. And so it had an impact. And so on Sunday in church, they all went to church, and Annalene, his wife, stood up and said, "But I now want to give my life to Jesus." So, it just has this ripple effect. So it's exciting things that are happening every day.
No, I'm sure. Yeah, it's really great.
Oh my word, that's beautiful. I wanted to say, I think what's so one of the other many million things that have stuck out to me, for those that might have dreams of, like I have a strong passion with like with women as well, like being uh being a godly example of a man and a brother to women. And and so hearing your story, because I've spoken with people my peers at my age, and it can be seen as, oh, like, that's weird, you should be working with the same gender or whatever. But it's like, I have a passion, yes, for men, but I also know a burden what God has put in my heart. And so when we hear your story, I think it's an encouragement of knowing, um, that God does speak like that, because look what He's done, over these years, and how He took you to work with women so that you could be stronger in working with men. And so, honestly, I would want to say, for those that would be listening, if that's you, because to society, even to the church standards, sometimes it might seem inappropriate or not right, but whatever the Lord puts in our heart, like, it's what He does. And so I'm so encouraged hearing just your, once again, the faithful obedience from back at Metric, and where it's led you. And so
Yeah.
it's very, very encouraging.
Well, I also just want to encourage whoever's listening that we will put links on the show notes. So if you want to go visit the Changemakers website, get in contact with Erena. There's even going to be a link with some testimonies of some of the stories of the men. So you're welcome to go and check it out. Yeah, but Erena, I'm sure for the things that you've been doing and where you've been moving around, there must be some things that's really burning in your heart and that you wish you could share with people. I don't know if it's people that you still want to encourage to go on a journey, or is it people out there that maybe don't always understand. I mean, I think many times, especially working with people with gang and drug backgrounds, like so many times people have really rejected them and written them off as a loss. But you've seen the opposite of how God can really come and turn people's around and redeem them uh, to a place that is just so amazing. And I don't know, what is the message living in your heart that you wish more people would hear and be encouraged by?
Yeah, it happens at a place of intimacy with the Lord. When you feel His heart, He has a calling and a purpose for each one of us, and it's up to us. Am I going to walk in it, or am I going to turn my back on it? Because I think that's the most important thing. And the other thing that I learn daily is that it's not my will, because one wants to do the thing a certain way, but to always just know God has his own way. And the peace that floods one's heart when you know you're doing right, you're dying to your own image or your own idea, just that peace that overflows is so beautiful. And the thing that I want to encourage people that God will provide everything that is needed because it is his work. Partners and the funds and the friends that God puts around one. To me, that just speaks of God's faithfulness. And even in my alone times, I'm just always aware of his presence. And if the scripture that is really burning in my heart is Ephesians 3, verse 10, but in the Amplified, it speaks about God's church. It's through us, his body, that he wants to show who he is through us, even though we're full of cracks. But the powers and the principalities that are out there, it is through us, weak vessels, that he wants to show his glory. And that's what I can see. And so the glory belongs to him, but he's using his church. He's using us.
That's awesome, yeah.
Erena, I have to ask you, spending so much time with all the colored brothers, are you a very good dancer?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay,
No.
You have your own groove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Do they ever put you on the spot?
No, luckily not. I love watching them. I love watching them dance. Oh, that gives me so much joy.
Oh, I can imagine. I think I've said it all. This idea again, like Erena, like we honor Louise for she's running with the vision that she wanting to do this podcast and these stories, and I it has been such a beautiful platform of hearing of God's faithfulness. So I'm just thankful to both of you. We've done several of these, and I don't know if it's because it's video so it's like all the emotions are much more, but I've been like, but it's been beautiful. Like I have felt the presence of the Lord here so much. And I just thank you so much for sharing your story, your vulnerability. This definitely gives me just a greater hope, even for the beautiful nation of South Africa, and just for passions such as these. So thank you. Bye, donkey.
Thank you for listening. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Caleb.
Yeah, Erena, I also just want to honor you for really being such a brave woman that's been walking there, places where many are feared to tread. And I know there's only one way to do that, and that is through the power of the Holy Spirit inside of us, the power of God. And you are a woman that really listens to the small voice of God, sometimes the nuanced voice of God, and walking it out day by day. And that's something that I've loved watching you over the years. I've learned from you so much. And I want to honor you also for your continued fight for men to take their rightful place in our communities in South Africa. And I just want to say thank you and honor God for you for that. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really blessed. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you for staying with us till the end. We apologize for the sound quality that was not good at some moments during our conversation. If you like this episode of We Talk Story, please like, comment, and hit the bell to be notified when the next episode is available.